Well, as Mike said, Ryan Day, our social media / webmaster / staff columnist / whatever else he can get his hands on, wrote an interesting article this week, The Politics of Quality.
Great title.
And Ryan was responding to a comment on one of our online articles. I think it was an older article. And the comment was along the lines of, we shouldn't drag politics into this.
Yeah.
To which Ryan's editorial response was, really?
Really? Yeah.
Politics influences every aspect of our lives, particularly our jobs. As Ryan points out, as a business owner or CEO or accountant or human resources person or health and safety person or whatever, your job is governed by the decisions that at some point were made at a political level, often for political reasons and sometimes even for political gain. We are all at the mercy of those who make decisions at the local, state, or federal government levels. So, I mean, what we're talking, you think about, labor laws or OSHA regulations, Americans with Disability Acts, environmental laws, and so forth. These are all laws that affect what we do in the workplace. And you do have to pay attention to them. And you should actually, I believe, and we'll get to this in a little bit, I think it should even be the source of discussion in the workplace, not just at the CEO level, but further down too, because eventually all these laws, maybe the CEO pays attention to them, but the CEO's passing the responsibility for putting whatever regulations in place, those eventually trickle down to your shop floor or your office people. So, yes, even if you do it kicking and screaming, you do drag politics into the workplace. By the way, many, if not most industries, probably including yours, have lobbyists. Those are people who work with politicians working on their behalf in state and federal governments. And I mean, think about it. Do you think people like, Bill Gates or the late Steve Jobs, did they ignore the impact of political decisions on the business? Of course not. I mean, they're in there mixing it up. They're talking to politicians. They've got the clout to get a politician's ear. Of course politics is part of it. But I want to take this discussion a little bit further. One of my pet peeves is the idea that we leave our political or religious or environmental or health views or whatever at the door when we come to work.
Right.
That the idea that we come to work and somehow we just magically set all this aside and we're just little flesh machines and we go and we do our job and we plug this into there and we write things and we do that and somehow we do this completely without a context. That's nonsense. Of course we all operate within the context and we should. And I believe these ideas and viewpoints and so forth should be brought to the workplace. I'll get to that why in just a minute. And I don't mean that we should be proselytizing. I don't mean it's right to have employees or management, trying to get people to come over to their political view or their religious views or whatever those views are. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking that a workplace should be open to the free flow of ideas, even if it's ideas that you may disagree with. I think they got to be presented in the right way, and that's always where it's tricky. You got to make sure you're not stepping on somebody's toes. You got to make sure somebody doesn't feel like they're being harassed, whatever that means. And so forth, but I think the idea that when you walk into the workplace and now, just be sure, you don't put like an Obama for president or the Tea Party rocks sticker in your office cubicle, your own office cubicle, I think that's silly. I think we come with a sense of who we are, and I think as long as you're not stepping on somebody's toes overtly by doing that, I'm not sure there's a problem with it.
I don't know if there's a problem with it. I think what the reader who initially wrote the comment, "Let's keep politics out of this," was really talking about was the idea that there's an emotion to political discussions, and I think that you want to maybe step back from that if you can. You're not going to leave it at the door. You're not going to not be who you are when you're in the office and when you're in a discussion maybe. But I think the idea is that you're going to take a step back from the emotionalism of that, and you're going to look at hopefully just the data of an argument. I mean, we know the hot button. We know it all the time. We talk about it with the hot button issues. If you talk about climate change, we know that we're going to have that.
We're going to get comments, right?
Or Six Sigma. I mean, there's another one that's more specific to our industry. We know that there's passion there, and politics as a phrase is pretty darn broad.
Right.
If you think about it, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean voting. It doesn't necessarily mean what government enacts. Politics can mean what you think, what you want to convey to somebody else emotionally too. So that is, I think, the concept that the reader was initially referring to, that Ryan says you can't take that. And you can't. You're right. You can't divorce it. But the idea that you want to try to winnow it out a little bit and be more database, I think, is what we're really getting to here.
Exactly, and I think that's my point. And we learn from each other as a result of that. Whether it's ethical issues,
yep,
or being informed on what's going on in government that may influence your job. I think if these aren't discussed in the workplace, then really you're uninformed. You don't know where your business is going. As a matter of fact, I would even argue you don't necessarily know how to deal, in some cases, with your customers. If you don't know what's going on with business, particularly, and this would be relating more to the political industry, but I would say sometimes even ethical and religious views. If you don't understand where your customer is coming from, if you don't understand the ins and outs of these things, and then you're trying to deal with somebody who's maybe in the middle of that for whatever reason, then you're not going to relate to your customer in the right way. I think it's just, one of these things that came to me is, the United States has really been referred to often, it's the great melting pot, mm-hmm, right? And that's supposed to be one of our strengths, is we have all these divergent views and religions and ideas, and they all go together, and the parts end up creating something that's bigger than the whole. I think that is the case within the workplace as well. I think it's just, you have to be careful how these things are shared.
Yeah. Well, Benjamin Franklin referred to it, 200 plus years ago as the marketplace of ideas. That you, in this country, what we bring to it is, from all those divergent backgrounds, is you come armed to the discussion with knowledge, and you try to sway people to your point of view, maybe, and that's political. Again, that's getting back to the political realm of this. So yeah, of course, there's going to be that element of it in the workplace. It's got to be. It should be. That's the beating heart of an organization is passionate people who want to convey their viewpoints. I think the idea that we're going to keep politics out of it, as the writer said, who Ryan commented to, was again this idea that you don't want to forget about that, but you also want to not weigh it too heavily, and you don't want to. We're going to get to this, and that's actually another nice transition. Right. We're going to get to the idea of propaganda in a minute too.
Right.
That you don't want to propagandize. You don't want to proselytize.
Right.
You want to talk, and you want to have your passionate beliefs. You want to express that to your coworker, your boss, or your underling, whatever it may be, but you also want to do it from a database perspective, because ultimately the decisions are going to come from that database perspective, I think, especially in our industry. I mean, quality assurance. I mean, it really all should be about the data, but we know it's not all about the data.
Yeah, it's not all about the data.
Yeah, we know.
Well, I mean, to get back to Ryan's point here, if you're a business owner or a CEO, you need to keep abreast of what is happening in politics. You need to bring politics into it, at least in terms of your own personal information, and you need that in order to be prepared. Call it risk management. Mm-hmm. Ryan, in his article, gives a handful of resources that you might actually find useful. But I say it's also important for middle managers and even the rank and file, because after all, if some new policy comes down the pike involving, say, health and safety regulations,
good example,
it is not going to be the CEO that implements those policies. Most likely, the nuts and bolts of those policies will be carried out by the shop floor, the office workers. So it really behooves them, you, me, to be prepared as well, and to stay informed. So thanks, Ryan, for a good article, for a thought-provoking article there.